Morning, welcome back to another TNG review with myself, Chris. It's good to see you back. Hopefully you've watched the previous episodes and you're up to date. This is the last Outpost. This is the episode where we finally get to meet the Ferengi. They've mentioned them, they set them up in Encounter at Farpoint with a brief mention, and now we get to meet them. Is it worth the wait? Is this a good episode? I'm nodding if you're not looking at your screen. It is a good episode. For some reason I really like this episode, so it's going to do quite well in my books. I'll point out its flaws and its faults, but I'll also try and swing you around to my way of looking at it. I think it's a good one. Anyway, let's take a look at the back of the box. Before I read the synopsis on the back of the box, quick look at the front of the artwork, and for some reason they haven't included the sky that was probably rendered afterwards when in post. They've just got the blue screen background behind Riker. Don't know why that is, but that's the front of the box. On the back it says, in the last Outpost, we meet the ferocious alien race called the Ferengi. Riker tries to save both their starship and the Enterprise after they are frozen in space by a mysterious life form known as Portal. Sounds good in principle. Let's see if the execution is as good as the hype on the back of the box. So this is the last Outpost, and I've got to say I like this episode a lot. It's got a lot of good things going for it. A couple of small negatives, but on the whole it is a good episode of Star Trek. Starts off with the Enterprise chasing down this Ferengi vessel, and you get all the mystery and all the sort of tension out of the fact that this is the first contact with the Ferengi. All we have is hearsay and rumour, so it's an interesting episode from that point of view. It is just the Enterprise crew just feeling their way and being incredibly impressed with the Ferengi vessel and what it's capable of doing to the Enterprise before they realise that it's not the Ferengi, it's the planet below. Once again, we get a superior being, a superior life force, choosing to judge humanity. It is a reoccurring theme in Star Trek. I think Gene Roddenberry likes the theme because it puts humanity on test, and he likes to believe, should I say did like to believe, that humanity had come far enough by the 24th century to actually be evolved to a state where we could handle these kinds of offences made to us by superior beings. We could stand up for ourselves and look at our faults, but ultimately come out on top. And that's what Riker does at the end of the episode, when he has his little riddle and refuses to move when the portal drops down this massive blade onto his shoulder. I mean, come on. I know the guy's supposed to be cool, but anyone would flinch. Maybe any Data would probably be able to realise and have the speed to move if it actually was going to hit him in the shoulder and cut his arm off. And maybe that would have been more exciting to see Riker his right arm chopped off. But really, that's the end of the episode's a bit of an anticlimax because he just simply answers a question and then the Enterprise gets freed. The bulk of the episode that I like is in the first 2/3, when we're dealing with the mystery of the Ferengi and we're trying to figure out what the hell is going on, which is normally what makes most Star Trek episodes so enjoyable. It is the mystery of what is going on. Ultimately, it's a nice little ride, and I wish they could have done more with the systems failing on the Enterprise. Just simply showing people putting blankets around themselves doesn't really cut it for me. I want to see breath coming out of people's mouths, that they're absolutely freezing. Captain Picard's walking around like it ain't no thing. He's just got his regular uniform on. But no, it's a great episode. I really do. It's got something about it. It's probably something to do with the fact it was my first VHS tape that I purchased. I was getting hooked on Star Trek The Next Generation, and yeah, I like it a lot. I'm going to start buying the tapes. So I bought that first one, not knowing at this point that it was going to go on for 7 years. I have to go out and buy what amounts to a lot of tapes. It's like 80 something. And that's why it holds a slightly special place in my cold, tiny heart. It's the first one I bought, and it's a good tape to buy. I'm glad I hadn't bought the previous tape. That wouldn't be a very good first impression, but it's got Last Outpost on it and what we're reviewing next week, when no one has come before. 2 rock-solid episodes of Star Trek. I know this episode gets a lot of flack for the Ferengi aspect and how they're a bit of a letdown ultimately, but the good intentions were there. They didn't come together. That's just TV. I think quite a few of the writers have said writing for Star Trek is damned difficult. They had such strict parameters writing this show, particularly in the first couple of seasons when Roddenberry was very much in charge. No conflict between characters on the Enterprise. All the conflict had to come from external sources, and the writers love to give internal conflict because it creates drama, and they weren't allowed to do it. Ultimately, there are some good episodes in season 1 as I'm reviewing them all again, and Last Outpost is one of the better ones for me personally. So let's move on and see what the best bit is. So this is what I consider to be the best bit of the Last Outpost. This is the exchange between Geordi and Riker down in engineering, and they're discussing how they can maybe break free of the force that's got them. They still believe it's the Ferengi, and it's a really nicely written scene because it's got a couple of absolute gems of dialogue, or even just gesture. You've got Geordi's wooey, which is, I don't know if he just ad-libbed that or what. Was he improvising? Maybe, I don't know. And the thumbs up at the end, and then Riker's quip back. It's just, it all feels very American. It's like, yeah, Americans in space, yeah. No offense to Americans, but that's just how it comes off. USA. It's great. Let's watch the scene unfold. I particularly like where the music comes in a moment when Riker gets near the dilithium crystal chamber, and you can just hear the music start to swell as the idea comes both their minds that maybe they can do something, and it's just got nice momentum in this. I just love it. Let's watch it. The music.
What's our acceleration delay between slow reverse impulse and top warp speed?
Well, that's 0.300 milliseconds. There's... I see where you're going. We ship down and kick hard into warp 9. Yeah, come back fighting. Woo-wee!
Can we do it, Geordi?
Ask me after it's done, sir. I want a slow...
Why aren't there any engineers around who can do this stuff? Why is Geordi looking to do it?
We'll show him what this baby can do, sir.
Give me everything you got, LaForge!
Aye, sir.
The best. So this first bit of trivia is to do with the Ferengi vessel and why it looks the way it looks. It was directly inspired by the horseshoe crab. There was one of these on Herb Wright's desk, and that shape was adopted as the overall kind of look for the Ferengi vessel, and it was handed over to Andy Probert, who did the design, and that's what we ended up with, and you can directly see the reference there. It was on that guy's desk. Thank goodness there wasn't a unicorn. So next up, sticking with the Ferengi, is their weapons, the blue energy whips that they use. Using whips, I suppose, a bit kinky. It doesn't help that when Armin Shimmerman, one of the Ferengi, we all know him as Quark, uses it towards the end of the show, and it just ends up being this... It looks like an adult toy, let's be honest. Rather extreme one, but yeah, they didn't go down too well. They were intended to be a little bit different to how they look on the screen. There was something wrong with what got delivered from whoever produced them, and they had to make modifications to make them do what they're doing in the episode at all, and no one liked them, and you never see them again. So there is a reason to why the Ferengi vessel appears to be brilliant white inside with no detail whatsoever. When the Damon's on the view screen, that's all you can see behind him is just brilliant white. Stylistically, I think it looks quite nice. It's a bit unusual to show, you know, another species like that with an extreme close-up of his face all the time. I mean, it gives the episode, you know, a touch of class because of it. It's not normal, and you go outside normal, you get interesting. But the reason it's all brilliant white is apparently because Ferengi have poor eyesight, and to compensate for their poor eyesight, they have very large ears. See, it all makes sense now. And because of their poor eyesight, they have the interiors of their ships very brightly lit. I think they've gone a little bit extreme with the brightness of the background. It'd be nice to see a little bit of detail. It appears that they are just floating around in brilliant clouds. I don't know what we're supposed to ascertain from that brilliant whiteness. In future episodes, Ferengi seem to get by just fine in normal lit interiors of ships. Even their own vessel, when you get to it in Menage a Troy episode, you see the interior of a Ferengi vessel and it's just normally lit. So I guess these ideas got dropped somewhere along the line, but that's why it's like this in this episode, apparently. So what you can see on screen right now are some of the drawings that Andy Probert did. He did the design work for this ship and lots of other lovely things in Star Trek The Next Generation. He was also charged with coming up with the look of the Ferengi. The Ferengi were conceived by Herbert Wright, one of the co-producers on the show, as a new villain. When they were considering a new villain, they didn't want the Klingons again, and they were thinking, well, who is the current villain in our 1980s world. And at the time, Wall Street was coming out with Michael Douglas and the whole greed is a good thing. It wasn't quite released. It came out in late 87, but that was in the air, that the financial markets were the new bad guys, and greed is good. So that's the hook they went with, the Ferengi, wandering around the galaxy looking to make deals and make as much profit as possible doing it. So that's where they came from, and these are the drawings that were being done, and concept art is tremendous. It's just a shame that the actual characters on screen didn't live up to the hype, and combination of the first coverings over their grey kind of pyjamas and the way they were jumping up and down and their blue whips, it didn't come together, and it took years to kind of dull that shine that the Ferengi had in those first couple of episodes. And even in Deep Space Nine, it's kind of a hangover. They couldn't lose all their traits, but they certainly pushed the negative ones more to the back and brought out more interesting aspects to their society. So this is a copy of the casting call that went out to the agencies in Hollywood in 1986 looking for Geordi LaForge. Lieutenant Geordi LaForge, a 20 to 25-year-old black man, blind from birth. With the help of a special prosthetic device he wears, his vision far surpasses anything the human eyes can see. Although he is young, he is quite mature and is best friends with Data. Please do not submit any street types, as Geordi has perfect diction and might even have a Jamaican accent. Should also be able to do comedy well. So now we're into the what the section, and this is all about the comm system, the communication system on the Enterprise bridge. You get some really odd behaviour in this episode for what the ship apparently decides to transmit to the Ferengi and what it withholds. It does seem to have some AI behind it, because it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. In this first clip, Picard asks for the communication hailing frequencies to be open. Yara obliges, you hear the little blip. And then he says, at least we won't begin with weakness. Quite clearly, quite out loud. And it's like, surely that got transmitted, didn't it? Or maybe the computer's clever enough to think, you don't want them hearing that, I won't transmit that, I'll just wait to wait for you to start speaking with authority. I know that's what you want transmitted. That might make sense, but later on this gets disproved. So let's just see that happen.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
At least we won't begin with weakness.
Attention, Ferengi Sasha. This is Captain Jean-Luc Picard of the USS Enterprise.
So that seems pretty obvious that the Enterprise is kind of filtering what is being transmitted. Or maybe Yar's got a finger on a button that she can just turn it on and off, which would be daft. You get so much human error from that. And then later in the episode, once again, Captain Picard this time asks Data to open up the hailing frequencies, which he does. And then Picard says, awaiting your response. And then immediately after that, the frequency's still open, Yar says, suggest first strike, sir. Did they hear that? They now know that they know what you know, and it doesn't make any sense. But then you think, well, obviously the computer is filtering out what is being said. But then the next scene after this one that I'm just going to show you disproves all of that. Anyway, let's see the scene.
Open hailing frequencies.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Ferengi vessel, we await your response.
Suggest first strike, sir. Our shields now only have 63 seconds of power left before lowering.
So then you're thinking, well, obviously the computer is filtering out things that you don't want the person receiving these messages would like to hear. Very clever AI. But then later, Picard is talking to the Daemon face to face in the scene just coming up, and he's talking to him about doing some sort of profitable trade or something, and then Data whispers to LaForge, he whispers it, mind, side of his mouth, just like Geordi. Yankee traders. And then the Daemon hears this. It's like, well, what's the difference? There's no difference between that and earlier dialogue when when Yar says it authoritatively out loud, recommend first strike, sir. That's full on. That's like what that must have been transmitted, surely. Anyway, look at the scene and make up your own mind. It doesn't make any sense to me whatsoever when you think about it.
You would agree to a more productive relationship?
I prefer a more profitable one, human.
Yankee trader.
Explain what means Yankee traders.
He heard that.
It recognizes your interest in profit.
So Riker beams down to the planet with the rest of the away team, but their signal has been scattered by the force field, and Unfortunately, it hasn't been scattered enough to turn them into piles of gloop. They are still human beings. He's wearing his communicator, but he doesn't even try it. He just wanders around, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Is anybody there?" Just try the pin on your chest, mate. That's what it's there for. Try the communicator. It turns out later they don't work, but he doesn't even make the attempt. And then later we get some serious back talk from Geordi when they find him hanging upside down and Riker's in front of him and he says, "Are you conscious?" And Geordi gives him real lip back. "Do I look conscious? You idiot."
Do I look conscious? What are you doing? I'm resting, sir.
What he goes on to say, it just really, it's like, oh, give the guy some respect, Geordi. He's a damn commanding officer, damn it. Anyway, back talk and not trying your communicator. 2 problems on the planet. So we get to hear a couple of times that the Enterprise has got no power left, and you can see that from the external shots. All the lights are out pretty much. Haven't got the budget to do loss of gravity, because surely that would be one of the things to go towards the end when you've lost all power. You don't need gravity. You need life support, but you don't need gravity. Surely that should get shut off and put something back into the heating systems or something. But they just can't afford to do it, so we don't ever get to see it, unfortunately. So this next problem isn't really to do with the plot at all. It isn't to do with the plot at all. It's to do with a visual effect. It's the external shot of the Enterprise and the Ferengi vessel in orbit around the planet. If you look at it, can you see what's wrong? It's quite obvious. I'll give you a second. Just look at it. Now look at the version I did for my thumbnail, and you might spot the difference. It's the light sources. On the episode, the light source on the planet is coming from the right, quite evidently. Yet the light source on the vessels, which is in close proximity to the planet, is coming from the left. You can see the light on the back of the yoke of the Enterprise. They're completely opposite each other, and I thought they would have fixed this in this new edition. They fixed the problem in the original episode on VHS tape when Data's looking at his command console, and the Ferengi apparently start reading the data. It's upside down. I remember that. And it's a nit in Phil Farron's book. But they fixed that on the new version. They've managed to invert it and make it the correct way up. But they haven't corrected the light source for the planet and the ship. I fixed it. Give me a job. It didn't take too much effort. Yeah, there you go. So welcome to my scoreboard. And if I just zoom in, there you can see the last outpost bang in the centre with his little star. I'm going to manoeuvre this into position. Action at the top, mystery on the left, romance on the right. So it's obviously a mystery episode with some action. So it's going to be heading towards encounter at Farpoint. Let's start pushing it that way. Now I think for all the reasons discussed in this video, I like this episode a lot. So I'm going to be pushing it approximately. I think I'm going to put this one on the edge. Shall I put it on that edge of the neutral zone or inside? Obviously being closer to the centre is better, so I am going to go with it's not as much of a mystery as Encounter at Far. It's more of a mystery than Encounter at Farpoint. I feel. I mean, the majority of the episode is what is going on, just that little bit of action at the very end. So I'm going to push it down here a little bit, and I'm going to put it on the good side. There's a lot of reasons why I like this episode, so it's definitely going within the neutral zone towards the centre of the galaxy where everyone's trying to get to. Don't think we're going to find God there, thankfully, but yeah, there. The last outpost is the one to beat at the moment. Will the next episode do it? Well, it might just. We'll leave that for the conclusion. That was the last outpost. Thanks for watching it. I hope you enjoyed it. Next week we are doing Where No One Has Gone Before. That's the episode where we meet the Traveller and the influence he puts over onto Wesley and Captain Picard, not to Crusher, and we get the ball rolling on Wesley becoming a bridge officer. That's next week. If you want to get a notification when that gets released, hit the subscribe button. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button. It all helps me move things forward with this new project. Anyway, hope you have a good week, and I will see you next time. Take care. Bye bye.